Welcome to another public service announcement, public service information with Sean Vincent. We're going to be getting some inside knowledge today on this episode of Is It? Shit. So what are we looking at today, Sean?
Well, today we're looking at the Overloud Gems Dopamine. And it's a plugin or a pair of plugins from Overloud Gems. And I've only discovered this recently, but it's emulating something that we used to do in the studio years ago, back in the dark ages when we used to record everything on analog tape. Tape could get quite noisy, and you used to have racks of Dolby. Dobly. And Dolby A was like lots of rack mount units, which everything had to be encoded with and then decoded with on playback. And what it basically did was it. I mean, this is a very sort of...
So hold on, just before we get to what it did. So Dolby, you'll recognise this because it started to appear on CDs and...
no, it was cassettes.
Cassettes,
so domestic cassettes, you would have Dolby, but you would have the domestic versions. You have Dolby B or Dolby C.
Okay, and they were noise reduction systems.
Noise reduction systems.
Take the hiss off playback cassettes.
Yes, so the cassette would have been encoded with Dolby B or Dolby C at the factory, and then you would have a decoder in your cassette player which would remove the noise.
We've been discussing this before. I didn't know that was how that worked.
That was how that worked.
I just thought it was like normal.
No. So basically, Dolby A was the professional version of Dolby, which you didn't get domestically. It was only on big studio multi-tracks.
Okay.
And like I say, you'd have a rack of them, and
so a rack being like a system per channel.
Yeah. Each channel needed its own Dolby processor, and then there was different cartridges you could put in it for different kinds of things. And the Dolby A cartridge basically would encode it with basically loads of top end, like too much top end, which it would then remove at the other end on playback. But it would remove it in such a way that it would take the hiss with it.
Right.
Basically. So you could get a very clean sound on tape, right up until the days where we got to digital tape and we didn't have hiss anymore so much.
Because, of course, it was working on magnets and you used to lose the top end on tape the more that the tapes go past the record head.
So literally, because of the friction of the tape rubbing over the record and playback heads, it would degrade. And every time you rewind and play and rewind and record
doing
and play,
overdubs. And
it would get duller and duller. And it was known as chasing the top end. You'd be putting more and more top as the day went on, and in order for the mix to stay the same. That was a thing that happened.
Okay, and so to overcome that and help...
Dolby A would be used to process the stuff to get rid of the hiss. But some engineers discovered that if you encoded with Dolby A but didn't decode, it added a really nice sheen. It left the top end on, didn't take it off again, and people discovered that if you put that on a vocal, used it as a vocal process, it made the vocal sound amazing. So that's basically what this is. It's the encoder part of a Dolby A system.
Encodes doesn't decode.
Yeah, and
very, very cool.
It basically adds some really nice high-end sheen. You could argue that it's just EQ, but it does it in a really nice way. Yeah. There's some really nice, interesting harmonic stuff going on. It's a really nice sound.
So looking at that, look at the GUI. What are the controls?
So the white one is the 361, which was the Dolby A that we used to have in all the studios. So that comes with the standard cartridge, which does exactly what I've said. And then it also has one which they call, bear with me, what do they call it? Is it like the DS mode or something? But there's a mode where it's specifically for vocals, and it does a very vocally kind of thing. It makes them sound really, really lush. So there's one which you would use for everything else. So you click on the cartridge on the right, on the top one there, and it would flip between the vocal specific one and the normal one. And then the other one is the 180, and the 180 is a copy of something that was made by TIAC, or Tascam as they were known. And that was basically another Dolby encoder and decoder unit for the slightly lower down studio market. So if you had an 8-track studio, maybe you might have the TIAC system.
Right, okay.
But it does the same thing, and it's a slightly different sound. So basically this is a plugin that gives you that sound. Oh, the vocal one was called the Noise Stressor. That was it.
So, having used both the hard... This is the great thing about doing this with you, Sean. It's not the only good thing, but it's...
Yeah, is the only good thing. The only good thing.
So you've used the hardware version previously on vocals.
Never saw the TIAC one, but yeah, the Dolby one, yeah, used it all the time.
And you used the plug-in, or how do they compare?
Do you know what? It has been 30 years since I used it, but...
You could actually hear Top End 30 years ago.
I could hear Top End 30 years ago, yeah. I remember it at the time as being... I thought it was a really clever idea when when it was explained to me what they were doing. I just thought that was genius, and it did sound amazing. And bearing in mind, in those days, plugins didn't exist. There was no digital audio. There were no clever tricks. Either it was EQ, it was compression or expansion, reverb or delay. That's kind of it. There wasn't anything else. So this then was, there was no exciters really.
Yeah. Oh, so it just gave you, it's just your extra little bump.
It was a real little bump in a vocal, which was amazing, which was quite often what you needed to add to it. So it was really cool. Trying this out for the last week, it does that. It absolutely does that. The only thing I would say is that these days we have other tools that can make a vocal sound more exciting. But this absolutely does what the hardware used to do.
Yeah. I like the idea of being able to put together, there's a kind of nice, with this saturation and these emulators, you could put together your sort of studio. You could do that. You could emulate a studio of the past.
You 100% can, yeah. Yeah, but with the reliability of the studio now.
With the comfort of doing it in your...
I mean, this is the other thing people don't understand. It's like, we spend 90% of the time in the studio these days working, getting on with it, recording, mixing, mastering, doing the job. We'd spend at least 50% of any studio time in those days
doing drugs.
10%. No, I'd say you'd spend such a long part of the day getting the gear ready, prepping the gear. I'd have to get in an hour before the assistant engineer to set the tape machine up with tones. Get everything ready, get all this stuff set up, patched. You'd spend hours getting things ready, then do a little bit of work, and then pack it all away again. There was so much more faffing, whereas now we're just working, we're just getting on with it. And tools like this, something that would have been a bit faffy to set up and patch up,
it's just there.
Boom, click, done.
So I can see there it's quite pricey. However,
yes,
you get 15 days trial.
You do get 15-day trial,
and it's not your regular. This is obviously I've not heard of
Overloud Gems. No, they're new to me too.
But it'd be worth going and having a look, expanding your horizons a little bit.
100%. I think this is a really classy processor, and I think if I was working with, I do work with some big vocalists, and this could be the thing that nudges it into the where you want it to be. So I think it's a great thing. I really, really like it.
Okay, good. So the Overloud Gems Dopamine, Sean, the Dolby A encoder.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an effort.
That's an effort.
Is it shit? Is it shit?
No, not at all.
9.
No, again, like you said, the price is quite a lump of cash. But I think, if you're like one of these big super producers and you're sat there mixing a record with a big name vocalist, you want to get that really classy vintage vocal sound. This might take a lot of the legwork out.
You sort of, if they give you 15 days solid trial, you sort of realise that they're putting their money where their mouth is, don't they?
100%.
And they're saying it's worth.
Yeah, go and play with it. You'll know that this is worth the money,
whether it's for you or not. Okay, good stuff.
Cool, man.
Exciting review there.
Yeah.
Well, I thought so.
I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, jolly good. Here to please. So, I don't know what I meant by that. So, subscribe to the channel.
Yep, and also we have the Instagram now, Studio Life 101, and if you feel like supporting us, you can become a Patreon.
Okay, check out the merch stalls and all of the other links that are just below the video. But until next time,
see you soon.
See ya.